Yesterday I have already given you a broad overview of Max Weber, okay, on the writings of Max Weber. Today we are going to go into the deeper details of the concepts, okay. First, I'm going to start with his basic methodology, okay, and basic research questions that he has in his mind. And those are those questions which will make you mad, okay. In the sense, whatever you have read in your life, you will realize that it is waste, okay. You have wasted your life. You will realize it within 45 minutes. You will realize it, okay. See, what is Hegel to Marx? That is Immanuel Kant to Max Weber. So briefly, before talking about Weber, I would like to very briefly, because we are not philosophers, neither nor philosophy student. Briefly, I will like to talk about Immanuel Kant, because I believe UPSC may ask question on Immanuel Kant one day, just like it asked question on Hegel. Okay, although Hegel is not mentioned in your syllabus. See, still it asked. Now we are not in a position to challenge UPSC. UPSC is free. So we should have brief idea about Immanuel Kant also. Okay. So remember, what is Hegel to Marx? That is what Kant is to Weber. Okay. Now that means we first should have a brief idea about Kant. We know Hegel, we know Marx. We will know Weber, but we should know Kant. So briefly discuss Kant as well. Now कांट का ये जो आइडिया है बड़ा सिंपल है, ओके सिंपल तो नहीं है बट जो मेन एसेंस है उसका वो मैं आई टेल यू. See, there are two words that you have read, that you have heard, okay, but you still do not know the meaning of those words, okay. The words are empiricism, okay, and second is rationalism. You know these two words, you have heard these two words, but you do not really know, okay, the meaning of these words. Immanuel Kant says the world, दुनिया जो है, okay, the world basically is not one. There are two worlds. There are two worlds, okay. One world is the one that we can see, and one world is the one which we can only interpret, which is not visible to us. Okay, there are two types of worlds. Two types of worlds. Okay. One which is observable. What is the meaning of observable? This glass of water is observable. Simple सी बात है. I can see glass of water. I can touch glass of water. I can even drink it. Okay. Observable है. So one which is observable, that is empirical world. Okay. Second world is the one which is not observable. One which is not observable. And waiting for us to interpret it. Second world is not visible, but it is waiting for us to interpret it. See, I can see the glass of water, hold glass of water, drink glass of water. Can I see air? Hawa. Can you see air? Can anybody touch air? Can anybody smell air? Can anybody listen air? It is beyond sensory perception. Does that mean it does not exist? It still exists. Right? So in natural world also, not everything is observable. सही बात है. Can you observe atoms, touch atoms, smell atoms, listen to atoms? No, but they do exist. So just like in natural world, there are few things which are observable, few things which are not observable. Similarly, in the social world, many things are observable, many things are not observable. Now, in the social world, those things which are not observable and waiting for us to interpret it, that simply means that is what rational is. In the sense, rationalism, what is the meaning of rationalism? You see the things as it is, but just by seeing, you would not be able to understand. You would have to interpret what actually it means. Okay, few things are not literally observable to our eyes. We will have to interpret. For example, just like I told you yesterday, you saw observable reality, fight between people. But why? What was the reason? That is not visible to you. You would have to interpret. Okay, and we do interpret reality every day. When you would go out in the street to buy a cup of chai, okay, suddenly you see 2-3 people shouting, and then you look around, kya ho gaya, okay, and then you see that those people are fighting now, and then you stand in a corner, okay, chai peete rehte saath saath, and then you start thinking, what is wrong? Why are they fighting? The reason is not observable. You have to interpret it. Okay. Observable is only the fight. So there are two types of worlds. One which is observable, that is empirical world, sensory perception. Second, which is not observable but waiting for us to interpret it, that is rationalism. Okay. So you can simply call this as empiricism and this as rationalism. Okay. तो ये तो हो गया Immanuel Kant. This was all about Immanuel Kant. Max Weber is highly inspired by itni si baat of Immanuel Kant. Okay. And then he has developed so many theories out of this thing. I'm going to show you a few things now. Okay. You will get to know what exactly Immanuel Kant and Max Weber is going to tell us. Okay. I'll show you some pictures. You will have to tell me what are they. Okay. What is this? See, just think about your mind. Actually, your mind is at work now. Okay. Your eyes are not at work. Your mind is at work. Okay. Reality is not empirical. You are interpreting or not. You are interpreting the reality. It is not directly empirical or observable. Okay. क्या लिख रहे हो तुम लोग? अच्छा. Tell me what is this? अभी फंसोगे. सोचते रहो, बड़ा दिमाग का खेल है ये. ठीक है. अभी ये आसान नहीं है आज की क्लास. नेहरू. Who is this? So you think he is Ambedkar? अच्छा. ये कौन है? ये गांधी तुम्हें कहां से दिख रहा है? मुझे समझ ही नहीं आ रहा है. गांधी ऐसे थे क्या? बेवकूफ खुद बन रहे हो कि नहीं है बताओ दिल से. अंदर से तो पता है कि गलत बोल रहे हो. नहीं. चलो कोई बात नहीं. See what is important in these images. You know this is not Marx. Marx knows he is not he. Okay. World knows this is not Marx. But we somehow interpret this image as the image of Marx. Okay. Empirically, he is not Marx. But when you start interpreting, he becomes Marx. समझ गए? ठीक है. So you are saying he is Marx. Okay. Let me note these things down. Okay. Then you said this is Nehru. Now we will not just see who are they and what you think they are. I am going to ask you one important question after this. Okay. So you think it is Ambedkar. And you think it is Gandhi. Now, Max Weber says, historians have committed the similar mistake. Historians, philosopher, anthropologists, psychologists have committed similar mistake. The same mistake that you just committed 2 minutes back. You know he is not Marx. Still you believed it is Marx. Why? How did you come to believe that he is Marx? Because there are some features. Now this is very interesting thing that Weber is pointing out. Weber is saying that when you see this mustache, when you see this beard, okay, when you see this facial structure and this coat, these are the things which is making the image appear as Marx. Okay, so that means some of the features have been accentuated, exaggerated. Some of the features of the Marx has been exaggerated to such a level that you start thinking of the image as that of representative of Marx. Okay, now what were those features which were accentuated, exaggerated? Okay, some features accentuated, accentuated. Okay, mustache was accentuated. Accentuated मतलब exaggerate करके एकदम यूनिक फीचर्स को हाईलाइट किया है. In the sense, to highlight unique features, okay, to a very great extent. Mustache is a unique feature of Marx, highlighted. Beard, this specific type of beard is unique feature of Marx, highlighted. This coat is a unique feature of Marx, highlighted. And then you come to believe he is Marx. Okay. Second, see, despite not showing you that Nehru cap, I did not, in the image, I did not show you Nehru cap. Still you believed he is Nehru. Because Nehru is not just about cap. Okay. Nehru is not just about cap. Nehru is equally about ये red rose जो है. Okay, this is that thing which actually gave you this idea. Okay, if this rose was not there, then it may have turned out to be a difficult task for you to interpret who is he. Okay, so certain unique features again accentuated. Unique features exaggerated. Rose, this Nehru jacket or coat, this kind of hair, okay, or ye, I mean the facial expression, okay, only then it gave you this impression that this is Nehru. Now, fourth, Ambedkar. You know this is not Ambedkar. Still you believed he is Ambedkar because of this specific facts. Okay. Again, some features exaggerated. Some features exaggerated. Okay. This particular hairline. Okay. इतने ही बाल थे उसके भी. This jacket. Okay. This jacket. These are those things, this face cut. These are those things which have given this impression that this is Ambedkar. When in reality, he is not Ambedkar. Okay. Again, a bald head. Okay. And a specific kind of specs. These are those things, again, some features exaggerated. Then you come to believe he is Gandhi. Suppose if the specs was not there, if it was only this, even then you would have believed he is Gandhi. Okay. Now, Max Weber is pointing out very important thing that historians have committed similar mistake. Now, what does he mean by this? When Marx talks about capitalism, that is not what capitalism is. Those are exaggerated features of capitalism that made you believe that it is capitalism. दिमाग देखो तुम आदमी का. ठीक है. अभी how, I'll tell you exactly how. What you actually read in Marx was not capitalism. Suppose you spend your 20 years of life reading Marx, and on the 21st year you read Max Weber, you will realize that you wasted 20 years. What you read was not capitalism. What you read was what Marx thought capitalism is. Okay, and then you also got convinced that this is what capitalism is. So what is capitalism for you is exactly what capitalism is to Karl Marx. So capitalism for you is nothing but, I'll tell you exactly, थोड़े time में अभी बताता हूँ मैं. First let me ensure that these things get crystallized. Okay. When Durkheim talks about solidarity, okay, mechanical solidarity, organic solidarity, simple society, complex societies. Those are neither simple society nor complex society, nor there is mechanical solidarity nor organic solidarity. These are only concepts which made you believe that yes, there was simple society. Okay, some features were highlighted that made you believe that it is simple society. Some features were highlighted in the modern society that made you believe that yes, it is modern society. Okay, just keep these images in your mind because I cannot show you the image of capitalism, of course, क्योंकि capitalism is a mental construct. ये यहाँ पे है capitalism. Capitalism is not there in reality. This is what Max Weber is telling us. Okay. Anyhow, democracy. Democracy. When I use the word Marx, okay, just think like this. When I showed you this, you believed it is Marx, but you know this very well. He is not Marx. Still, you believed he is Marx. Similarly, when scholars, historians like or philosophers like Alex de Tocqueville, when he would talk about democracy in America, okay, so when he is writing about democracy in America, Max Weber would say, when I read Tocqueville's Democracy in America, I do not see democracy. I only see what Tocqueville describes American state as. In the sense, democracy is not empirically visible. When you read few things in your life, you take those things for granted. And what is actually shown to you are some features that make you believe that this is what democracy is. Are you getting my point? ये थोड़ा मुश्किल है, ठीक है, but I'll try to convey this to you somehow. Okay. Remember, once again I'm telling, he is not Marx, he is not Nehru, he is not Ambedkar, he is not Gandhi. Still you believed he is Gandhi, still you believed he is Ambedkar, still you believed he is Nehru, still you believed he is Marx. Similarly, you read capitalism, you read democracy, you read nationalism. Okay, they are not capitalism, they are not democracy, they are not nationalism, but still you believe they are capitalism, they are democracy, they are nationalism. समझे? Do you get it now? Okay. ठीक. There are two types of worlds. One which is observable, empiricism. One which is not observable, waiting for us to interpret it. And when you start interpreting, that is only interpretation. That is only interpretation. That is not absolute reality. Understood? The moment you start interpreting reality, reality becomes complex. Because that is only interpretation, that is not absolute version. And interpretation varies from one person to another person. Now you have some few relevant information on these two people. Okay, now let me show you exactly. Not show you exactly, but let me show you one paragraph also. Now, there is this book by Yuval Noah Harari. Okay, Homo sapiens. From that book, this is one extract. If you read this extract, okay, it says consumerism and nationalism work extra hours to make us imagine that millions of strangers belong to the same community as ourselves, that we all have a common past, common interest, common future. This is not a lie, it is imagination. Are you getting it? These are imaginations. Okay. First of all, consumerism is a concept that social scientists, economists, sociologists use to make sense of reality. Consumerism is not, you do not see consumerism. You see few things that you interpret as consumerism. Consumerism is not visible. Remember this. You interpret few actions as a reflection of consumerism. Agreed? Nationalism is not observable, but you interpret few things as reflection of what you believe nationalism is. Understood? Okay. Democracy is not observable, but you come to believe, historians come to believe, philosophers come to believe that these are democracies, these are autocracies, these are monarchies. The fact is, neither monarchy exists nor democracy exists. Nothing exists. These are only concepts used by social scientists. Okay. When Marx says societies progress from primitive communism to ancient society, to feudalism, to capitalism, to socialism, can you see these transitions in the empirical world? ऐसा होता है क्या कि तुम बैठे हो चेयर पे और ऐसे फ्यूडलिज्म से कैपिटलिज्म निकला तुम्हारे सामने से, कैपिटलिज्म से सोशलिज्म आ रहा है, ऐसा होता है क्या? हाँ, ऐसा होता थोड़ा ना है. No, 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 no. Weber not sounds philosophical. Weber sounds realist. ये जो असली बात है वो कर रहा है, बाकी सब फिलोसोफर्स है. मार्क्स बेवकूफ है, डरखाइम, सारी दुनिया बेवकूफ है, वेबर है सबसे आदमी बड़ा. ठीक है? ही इज प्रैक्टिकल. कहां रिच पुअर एग्जिस्ट? हु इज रिच, हु इज पुअर? रिच पुअर एग्जिस्ट कहां करते हैं? तुम क्या बात कर रहे हो यार? देयर इज नो रिच और नो पुअर. अरे वी, आई विल टेल यू, लेट मी टेल यू एग्जैक्टली. ओके, whatever you think exists does not exist. When you say poor, poverty, now poverty is a concept. Poverty is a concept. Poverty is not observable. You see only few people that you believe are poor. Okay, and then you make a concept called as poverty. Okay, now this poverty as a concept does not exist. It was your interpretation. I'll tell you what I mean by these things. Okay, why these things do not really exist. Okay, see, for example, features of rich and poor only. Let me talk like Weber. Write down one heading. Heading of the page should be objectivity in social research. One article written by Weber. Objectivity in social research. Okay. Weber clearly says that in social world, objectivity does not exist. Does not exist. Okay. First line. In social world, objectivity does not exist. Okay. Acha, give us 5 minutes. We are actually celebrating birthday of one of our staff, so just 4 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes, basically. So what I'm saying is, in the social world, objectivity does not exist. So what exists? Only viewpoints of researchers. Only viewpoints of researcher exists. And you come to believe those viewpoints as absolute reality. मार्क्स ने थोड़ा सा क्या बोल दिया 2-3 किताबों में कैपिटलिज्म के बारे में. You started thinking this is what capitalism is. ऐसा थोड़ा ना होता है. अरे that is only Marx का version of capitalism. That is not what capitalism is. इतना capitalism खराब होता, the way Marx has described capitalism, if it was really so bad, do you think it would have sustained for 200 years? If capitalism has sustained despite multiple recession, depression, that means capitalism is not that capitalism that Marx has discussed in his books. Something else is capitalism that we do not know. अंडरस्टैंडिंग अभी थोड़ा थोड़ा अंडरस्टैंड होएगा. अभी वो अंदर तक जाने में एकदम कंफर्टेबल पोजीशन में रहने के लिए थोड़ा टाइम लगेगा. ओके. In social world, objectivity does not exist. Only viewpoints of researcher exists. And the viewpoints are obviously always one-sided. Okay, viewpoints are always one-sided, and not just one-sided, but the viewpoints are also one-sided accentuation of reality. Accentuation of reality. Accentuation of reality. That means what Marx is talking on capitalism is not capitalism, that is his version of capitalism. What is Tocqueville is writing on democracy in America is not what democracy, that is what he thinks democracy is. Okay, understand, ये बड़ी important चीज है. When imagine if Modi, Prime Minister, writes a book on nationalism, that is not what nationalism is, that is what Modi thinks of nationalism. Okay, what is nationalism? What is capitalism? What is socialism? What is communism? What is democracy? What is liberalism? What is individualism? What is liberty? What is equality? What is fraternity? None of these things are objective realities. These are only concepts used by these scholars to interpret the reality. When I explained you social changes in Europe, I talked about individualism. Okay, right? Now, is individualism observable? First of all, it is not observable, but it is a label used by scholar to describe what is not observable. And when they label few things, of course, in the course of labeling few things, you tend to interpret in your own way. समझ रहे हो, ये थोड़ा डीप है ये. When you label few things, you tend to interpret in your own way through your knowledge. When the writers in the Hindu editorials, when they write anything on any specific event, for example, let me ask you one question, very basic question. Let me not talk about the Hindu, all those things. Let me ask you a very simple question. Is China democracy? हाँ, अभी देख लो, पता था नो आएगा. Remember, in social world, objectivity does not exist. So you cannot say yes or no, first of all. Okay. So when I ask you, in China, democracy exists, you cannot say no, it does not exist. Nor you can say yes, it exists. At max, what can you do? At max, you have to understand what Chinese think of their system. Okay. In China, democracy exists or not, this is something that you will have to interpret by putting yourself in the shoes of Chinese. Okay, that is very subjective process. The fact is, China calls itself socialist democracy. This is the fact. China calls itself socialist democracy, then how are you saying China is not democracy? When you say China is not democracy, that is the Western media's interpretation of Chinese state that you are speaking. Wait. रुको अभी. 2 points I have covered in objectivity in social research. Let me talk about third point. Since only viewpoints exists, in social world, therefore the historian must explicitly mention the meaning of the concept that is used by him to interpret the reality. Since only viewpoints exist in social world, therefore the historian must explicitly mention the meaning of the concept that is used by him to interpret the reality. Okay, a historian cannot take these things for granted. Okay, imagine a historian speaking like this. Okay, ये आप पहले लिख लो अगर लिखा नहीं है. Okay, इसको भी समझने में थोड़ा लोड लगेगा, प्रेशर जाएगा, बट मैं बताता हूँ क्या करना है. Imagine a historian speaking like this. French Revolution heralded the era of democratic ideals of liberty, equality, fraternity. अरे पूरा सेंटेंस इतना वेग है, एक बात समझ नहीं आ रही क्या बोलना चाह रहा है. ठीक है. First of all, when he says democratic revolution or French Revolution heralded era of democratic ideals of liberty, equality, fraternity, none of these words, पूरे सेंटेंस में जो उसने बोला, none of these words you see in reality. Is liberty visible? Equality visible? Fraternity visible? Revolution visible? Democracy visible? कुछ visible नहीं है, but still we understand. हाँ 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 ठीक है. Okay, कुछ visible नहीं. That was his interpretation of reality. Okay. The fact is, equality does not exist. Concept of equality exists. The fact is, liberty does not exist. Concept of liberty exists. Fraternity does not exist. Concept of fraternity exists. Democracy does not exist. Concept of democracy exists. Okay. Democracy does not exist. Still you believe it is democracy. Just like it was not Marx. Still you believed it was Marx. Some features are highlighted in democracy that makes you believe it is democracy. Just like some features were highlighted in the image of Marx that made you believe it was Marx. But in reality, it was not Marx. Similarly, in reality, what are highlighted of those form of governance are not democracy, are not the features of democracy. Okay, but somehow you come to believe it is democracy. Let me make it more simpler. Next point in this article only. Okay, this article is important. Once you understand this, then everything is easy. Okay. The duty of historian should be to explicitly elaborate the meaning of concepts used by him. The meaning of concepts used by him. The duty of historian should be to explicitly elaborate the meaning of concepts used by him. You cannot take those things for granted. Because if you start taking those things for granted, what will happen? Eventually in GS1, you will have to write answer of difference between Indian secularism, French secularism. Okay, पहले तो secularism समझा हमने, ठीक है. उसके बाद फिर इंडियन और फ्रेंच. पहली बात ना इंडियन सेक्युलरिज्म एग्जिस्ट करता है ना फ्रेंच, ठीक है. अब कंफ्यूजन ये इसलिए तो होती है दुनिया में क्योंकि historians never explicitly elaborate the meaning of those concepts. They take those things for granted that we know. And if those concepts really imply those meanings only, then why there is difference between French and Indian secularism? Okay, secularism is secularism. So French secularism, Indian secularism should be same. But why are they different? Because secularism is not secularism. Okay. I'll come to those details. Duty of historian should be to explicitly elaborate the meaning of concepts used by him. Why? Why he should explicitly elaborate the meaning of concepts used by him? Because research is always value laden. Research is always value laden. Okay. Value laden. That means the concept used by the scholar is not the absolute reality, but that concept is simply his interpretation of reality. That concept does not exist. His interpretation exists. Okay. Research is whatever Marx has said is not objective. Since he had been victim of oppression, exile, poverty, suffering all the miseries, and most of his later stage of life he spent in labor camps, lost his children. Okay, out of all these miseries, these concepts are developed. These concepts are not reality. These concepts are only imagination of Marx. Capitalism does not exist. Capitalism is an imagination of Marx. Socialism does not exist. It is only imagination of the Constituent Assembly of India. Okay, jab imagine someone asks you a question. This is very important thing. These are those things which people take for granted. उसके ऊपर सोचते ही नहीं है. Imagine Karan Thapar. Do you know Karan Thapar? Okay. Karan Thapar is one TV journalist. Okay. Imagine when Karan Thapar is asking one person about, the state of democracy in India. Okay, democracy has eroded. Something like this. Okay. The fact is, how did you measure the erosion of democracy? I mean, democracy कैसे मेजर किया इरोड हो रहा है, वो कैसे पता चलता है? ये बड़ा, these are those things जो अनकंफर्टेबल कर देगा किसी को भी. Okay, we took this for granted. हाँ, democracy इरोड हो रहा है. Okay, नहीं, economist intelligence unit has also clearly mentioned that India is failed democracy. Okay, failed democracy. But what is democracy? Democracy तो exist ही नहीं करता है. बताता हूं मेरे को. Because research is always value laden. इसलिए the duty of historian should be to explicitly elaborate the meaning of concepts used by him. Why? Because research is always value laden. Now next. Everything will be clear to you after 10 minutes. Okay. Abhi, you have to be confused first. Unless you are confused, you would not be able to understand. First, you need to get confused. Okay. Now, next and last thing that Weber talks about. He says that the only way to escape subjectivities okay, the only way to escape subjectivities is ideal type. is ideal type. The only way to escape subjectivities is ideal type. Ideal type. Okay. I'll tell you the meaning of this also. First, you just write ideal type. Next line. The very selection of research question is value loaded or value laden. The very selection of research question is value laden, first of all. Okay. Why you are researching on this topic is driven by your values. Why Max Weber has conducted research on Protestant ethics? He belonged to Protestant family. Okay. Why Marx conducted research on poverty? He was poor. He had seen poverty. If he had not seen poverty, he would not have conducted research on poverty. If he had not seen poverty, he would not have told us about inevitable contradiction in capitalism. Okay, so what he saw, he also made us believe. Okay, by showing and forming certain concepts that will make us believe also what he has seen. That is not real. Okay, the very selection of research question is value laden. Okay. Next. Objectivity. Objectivity in its pure form may not exist in reality, may not exist in social world, may not exist in social world because the data collected is again interpreted. Once you collect, the data is collected, okay. After what? After collection of data, what? You again then interpret what the data stands for, what it is telling us. Okay, again interpreted. Data collected is again interpreted. Firstly, the very process of collecting the data is highly interpreted, highly interpretative. Okay. What things you are picking from reality? Okay. In the name of data. And then once the data is collected, again you interpret. Okay. So reality is gone. So-called objective reality is gone in the whole process. Okay. Data collected is again interpreted. Okay. Finally, Weber says the max that a researcher, social researcher, can do is to be value neutral. The max that a social researcher can do is to be value neutral. Okay. That means, what is the meaning of value neutrality? Value neutrality simply means A process wherein researcher clearly sidelines his values, opinions, and biases. Okay. Process wherein researcher clearly sidelines his values, opinions, and biases and give importance to only what he is looking at. Okay. This is what being value neutral is all about. You remove your biases about that and then you study it. Marx was not value neutral. It was his poverty speaking through his book. Okay. It was his belief of workers being exploited that was speaking through his book and his concepts. Okay. Workers were not exploited. Capitalism is not exploitative. If that was the case, then capitalism would have been gone by now. Okay. थोड़ा सा ये जो वेबर है ना, ये अनकंफर्टेबल करता है शुरुआत में. Okay. Let us not go deeper into these things. And now let me straightforward talk about the concept, our first concept, ideal type. Okay. This will be our first topic. You briefly know the idea of, very briefly, you know social action, very briefly. You very briefly know ideal type, you very briefly know Protestant ethics. सब कुछ का brief तुम्हें आइडिया पता है, बट अब हम जो मेन टॉपिक है आइडियल टाइप वहां से शुरुआत करेंगे. इफ यू अंडरस्टैंड दिस टॉपिक एवरीथिंग विल बी इजी. नाउ व्हाट इज आइडियल टाइप? This was ideal type of Marx. This is not the real Marx. Ideal type of Marx. And remember, when I'm using the word ideal type, do not think about the English meaning of ideal. Okay, वो ideal नहीं है, मैं बताऊंगा. Ideal जैसे हम सोचते हैं ideal husband, ideal wife, ideal girlfriend, ideal boyfriend, वो ऐसा वाला ideal है ही नहीं है. Okay. Anyhow, this is ideal type of Marx. This is not real Marx. That means, to simplify, you just have to understand that ideal type means pure mental constructs. Pure mental constructs. Imagination. Okay, imaginative concepts. This is what ideal type is. And this is what every historian writes. Ideal types. In every book of history you will see, in every chapter, mass movement, women's movement, feminism, nationalism, state, nation, civilizations, ये सब ideal types हैं. Purely mental constructs of that writer. None of those things exist in reality. Okay. Purely mental constructs. Pure mental constructs हैं ये. So this was mental construct of Marx. You believed it is Marx because some of the features were highlighted. Mental construct of Nehru, mental construct of Ambedkar, mental construct of Gandhi. Okay. Now let us first define it. Ideal type is a pure mental construct of the researcher. अब जाके तुम्हें समझ आएगा सब, अब जाके वो क्रिस्टलाइज होएगा. Ideal type is a pure mental construct of the researcher that acts like a measuring rod to analyze the similarities and differences between the mental construct and empirical reality. Okay, now I'll give you one task also. अब तुम्हें समझ आ जाएगा. ठीक है. Ideal type, imagine any, like nationalism, pure mental construct of the researcher. Okay, and that mental construct of nationalism acts like a measuring rod to analyze the similarities and differences between this imagination and what is there in the reality. Okay, अब इसका मीनिंग क्या है एंड क्यों क्यों जो मैक्स वेबर है ये सब कर रहा है. Now I'm going to speak few lines. Japanese capitalism is different from American capitalism. Okay, imagine I'm a normal journalist, okay, or I'm an economist or a sociologist or a historian, whatever I am. Okay, so I'm addressing students, thousands of students. Okay, किसी seminar में Jaipur Literature Festival I have gone. Okay, and I'm giving one speech. See, Japanese capitalism is quite different from American capitalism. And the features, if you look into, the democracy is also very different. Yeah. अच्छा, पहली बात तो ये है, कैपिटलिज्म क्या है ये नहीं बताया. ठीक है. Japanese capitalism is different from American capitalism. अब जो तुम बोल रहे हो जो डिफरेंस है, वो डिफरेंस है या फिर तुम्हारा वर्जन है डिफरेंस का, ये भी क्लियर नहीं है. देखो ऐसा है, Japanese, this example will clear everything. Japanese capitalism versus American capitalism. Okay, versus British capitalism. ठीक है. I have three capitalism before me. All are capitalism. Let us assume all are capitalism. Okay. One thing is for sure, all are not same. All are capitalism, but all are not same. Right? Indian secularism, French secularism, Turkish secularism, American secularism, all are secularism, but all are not same. ठीक है. Now What is the next step? What do we do in reality? What we do is, when you compare Japanese capitalism with American capitalism, you cannot compare them unless you know what is capitalism. So first task of the researcher should be to make ideal type of capitalism. Before you compare Japanese capitalism with American, first you should make the ideal type of capitalism. What is the meaning of making ideal type? In the sense, you first make it explicit. What is actually going on in your mind when you are using this word capitalism bar bar? Okay. First task of the researcher should be to make it explicit. What is he meaning by capitalism when he is using this word? ओके अच्छा, अब देखो कमाल, तुम जादू मैक्स वेबर का, ठीक है. इफ आई आस्क यू व्हाट इज कैपिटलिज्म, व्हाट विल यू से? टेल मी. प्रॉफिट. प्रॉफिट, फ्री मार्केट, और क्या बोलोगे? प्राइवेट एंटरप्राइज, और है ना? ठीक. तो ये पता है क्या है? ये जो तुमने बोला, अब ध्यान रखना इस चीज को. ये वही है, ये वही दाढ़ी है कार्ल मार्क्स की जो तुमने बोली, और ये वही मूंछ है. वो मार्क्स नहीं है जो तुमने बोला. वो दाढ़ी और मूंछ तुम दिखा रहे हो और बोल रहे हो वो कैपिटलिज्म है. ऐसा नहीं होता है. देखो, you said capitalism is free market, right? Now see, this is very important, life changing moment. Okay, you said capitalism is free market. You said capitalism is no state intervention. फ्री मार्केट उसी को बोलते हैं. And then you said it is profit centric. You also said private sector is there. That means private sector is the owner of the means of production. Of course, private sector is the owner of means of production when there is no state intervention. This is what capitalism is. Now, ideal type is a pure mental construct. The fact is, this capitalism does not exist anywhere in the world. Can you tell me any country in the world where you have this capitalism? तुम नहीं बोला है अभी, तुम्हारे दिए हुए फीचर्स हैं ये. Do you have any country in the world where you have free market, no state intervention, profit only and private sector ownership? Is there any country in the world? No, है ही नहीं. यानी हम बेवकूफी तो बन रहे तब से. And we are criticizing capitalism. Think about that person जिसने भूत देखा है रात को सपने में, और सुबह उठ के वो ढूंढ रहा है उस भूत को कि उसको मार दूंगा मैं, जबकि है ही नहीं, एग्जिस्ट ही नहीं करते हैं वो. नाउ यू टेल मी, अगर कैपिटलिज्म एग्जिस्ट ही नहीं करता है, ये क्या करते हैं हम ये हर रोज? Basically what we do, the researcher, as Max Weber clearly says, every ideal type is pure mental construct. What will we do now? Next task. देखो अब क्या करते हैं हम. ये जो मॉडल है कैपिटलिज्म का जो हमने बनाया अभी, इस मॉडल को हम अपने, we will keep this model in our mind and then we will go to Japan. Okay, we land in Japan and then we see how much of these features are there in Japanese capitalism. The features that we have in our mind, we will compare these features with Japanese capitalism. Okay, and we will obviously find some differences. Again, we will go to America with the same model in our head. We will again find some differences. So, what did we achieve really? Actually, by making this mental construct in our mind, we were able to study the reality in a better fashion. If you want to study anything, you first have to have a reference point. That reference point is mental construct. It does not exist. Okay, that is what you think that it is, but that does not exist. But this thinking will help you to understand what reality is, because then you will get to know, अच्छा ये तो है नहीं, ये भी नहीं है, ये है, उसकी जगह ये है. So actually, by this reference point, you actually came to know that this is what you actually got closer to reality. So by making this model, you then got to know exactly the Japanese capitalism is this, American capitalism is this. Okay. Similarly, we make ideal type of democracy also. When we use the word democracy, that is not reality. Democracy does not exist. It is only a concept used by scholars to analyze the reality. And if you are using a concept to analyze the reality, first you should understand. First you should explain what do you mean by that concept. So democracy. Before calling China non-democratic, first you will have to tell me what is the meaning of democracy. Now you will get to know why I asked you that question, is China democracy or not? You simply said it is not. But then first you tell me what is going on in your mind when you say democracy. जनरल विल. अच्छा ठीक है, इसको लिख लेते हैं, जनरल विल. और मल्टी पार्टी सिस्टम, मल्टी पार्टी सिस्टम. What else? Adult suffrage, free and fair election. ठीक. Fundamental rights. ओके, बाय द पीपल. हाँ वही, मल्टी पार्टी सिस्टम, फ्री एंड फेयर इलेक्शन, फंडामेंटल राइट्स, जनरल विल, यही सब बोल रहे हैं, राइट? नाउ यू टेल मी, इज देयर एनी country in the world where you have all these things? अभी तुम बोलोगे हाँ है. I'll tell you why. I'm saying there is no country in the world where you have these things. This is only mental construct. ये हमारा imagination है. Ideal types, Max Weber say, is a utopia. Ideal types are utopias that we have in our heads. First of all, fundamental rights. अगर फंडामेंटल राइट होते इंडिया में भी, अगर तुम्हारे दिमाग में चल रहा है इंडिया में फंडामेंटल राइट्स अगर होते, तो तब तो बात होती ही नहीं. क्रिटिसिज्म करने के बाद डिसेंट या एंटी नेशनलिस्ट इन सब होने की. वी डू नॉट हैव फ्री स्पीच. फंडामेंटल राइट तो छोड़ दो. इन रियलिटी यू डू नॉट हैव फ्री स्पीच. In the sense, fundamental, I'm not saying we do not have free speech. Yes, we have free speech. But again, it is a model. It is a model in our head, an ideal model, a utopia. Fundamental right per se in absolute sense do not exist anywhere in the world. Neither in India. In India, do we have absolute fundamental right? No. In China, do we have absolute fundamental right? No. In America, does anyone have absolute fundamental right? No. Fundamental rights, that means, are not exactly the fundamental rights in reality because they are not absolute. Free and fair election. Do you really think that we have free and fair election? कभी बूथ कैप्चरिंग की बात करते हैं. Sometimes we have EVM hijack or EVM hacking. ठीक है. Sometimes numbers are inflated. पता नहीं कितनी बातें हैं. In fact, electoral democracy, as an electoral democracy, according to ETU, we have failed. India is an electoral democracy in the sense the election is not free and fair anymore. This is what ETU says. EIU, Economist Intelligence Unit. So that way, free and fair, when we think free and fair, when we use this word free and fair, it is a utopia which does not exist anywhere. I'm not saying it in India it does not exist. Actually, it exists nowhere in the world. Agreeing? Multi-party system. Multi-party system is a utopia. It does not exist anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. How? India. Do we have multi-party system? Right? We have multi-party system. है ना? But it is a utopia because जब election आता है, we think of either Congress or BJP. That way, we have only bi-party system. है तो bi-party, dual party only. हम बोलते हैं multi-party. In China, there are multiple parties, but the ruling party is one. In India, we have multiple parties, but the ruling party are only two. Difference क्या है? They have only one, Communist Party of China. We have only two, Congress or BJP. So that way, multi-party system is a utopia. Democracy, multi-party system. But the ruling parties, dominant ones are two, Republicans, Democrat. Liberal party is also there in America. Green party is there. उनका नाम कहाँ सुनते हैं हम? So multi-party system again is a utopia. It does not exist anywhere. Some are uni-party democracy, some are bi-party democracy, some are multi-party. So multi-party is your imagination that it should be there in a democracy, but it does not exist in reality in everywhere. It is utopia. You're talking about utopia. Okay, I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. I'm saying it is utopia per se. Multi-party system per se as it is does not exist in all the democracies. And they are democracy also. Okay, there are many democracies where do not have multi-party system and still they are democracy. There are democracy where there is no free and fair election and there is no election at all, but still they are democracy. Fundamental rights may not be absolute, still they are democracy. General will की तो बात ही बहुत दूर की आती है. General will. General will is again a utopia concept. Why? It is utopia. General will means will of majority, right? Will of majority. But when you calculate the number of polls in 2019 election or in 2014, okay, you will come to know that it was less than 50%. तो विल ऑफ मेजोरिटी कैसे हुआ? पीपल डू नॉट गो फॉर वोट, पीपल डू नॉट गो फॉर वोटिंग. So what we call as general will is actually will of media. It is the will of media that we start thinking as general will. Basically, these are utopian things. These are concepts. What you actually, when I asked you features of democracy, none of these features are observable. First point. None of these features are empirical, observable. These are interpreted. You interpret few things as general will. You interpret few things as being representative of multi-party system. That is your interpretation. You interpret reality as having free and fair election. You interpret few acts as representative of fundamental rights. But this is utopia. This does not exist in reality. Okay, this is what I wanted to mainly explain to you. Okay. So this was my main ambition. Now you will understand everything from now on. Okay. First, we will write features of ideal type. Now you know what is ideal type? I hope you know what is ideal type. It is a mental construct by a researcher. It is not reality. Ideal types are not real. Okay. Features of ideal type. And even before features, write down one more line. Just one line. Ideal types are not ideal in literal sense of the term. Ideal type is not ideal in literal sense of the term because we also have ideal type of terrorism. That does not mean terrorism should be like this. Ideal type does not mean English wala ideal type. Ideal type of terrorism is also there. There is ideal type of terrorism also. Okay. Why few groups are called as terrorist? Few groups are not called as terrorist. वो होता कैसे है real world में? Okay. Ideal types are not ideal in literal sense of the term. We have ideal type of terrorism also. This I have written because I wanted to show you that do not get confused by this word ideal in the word ideal type. Okay. Ideal type of terrorism does not imply okay, the ideal terrorism does not imply the ideal terrorism. It only implies a mental construct of terrorism. It only implies mental construct of terrorism. Okay. It only implies mental construct of terrorism. Now, let me give you a very simple example before talking about features. Family. Family. When I use the word family, it is a concept. Again, it is a concept that I'm using. Okay. It does not exist in reality. It is a utopia. Why? Why? अभी तुम लोग मुझे बताओगे कैसे? Tell me the features of family. Just like you told me features of democracy or capitalism, you can also tell me the features of family. See, first feature of a family is what you would say is household. Second feature is husband, wife, and children. Okay. Third, marriage. Right. Now, in reality, in reality, this is simply a model. If you do not find this model in real world, that does not mean that that is not family. Okay, why? Because this model is highly heteronormative. There is a model of family where you have only husband and husband, no wife. Okay, and they are living without marriage, because marriage of the homos are not acceptable in India today. They are fighting for marriage rights, and they call and they say that we are family. Okay, so when they say they are family, you will say, how come you are family? Shadi tumhari hui nahi. Okay, then a researcher will ask in between, and they will say, "Are family kya hota hai? What is when you are saying how are you a family because you are not married?" Then he will ask you, "What is family to you?" First, write down the features, and then he will tell you that it is a mental construct, a utopia. So do not say that you are not family, because it is your construct only. Just because it is your construct does not mean it is legitimate. It is only a construct only. समझ गए? See, ideal types are not good or bad. They are just models. They are just models of reality. Remember, they are just models of reality. They are not reality, models of reality. We make models and then we compare. Okay. Remember, I asked you one question yesterday. Capitalism developed in England. You said yes. Okay. But that is only your interpretation. Because you think capitalism, when I asked you capitalism developed in England, what was actually going on in your mind? What was actually going on in your mind was first private sectors, okay, and industries, industrial revolution, okay, and profit, exploitation. These things were there going in your mind. Now, this is not right or wrong, this is a model. And when I asked you this model developed in England, you said yes. That this is wrong. This model has been there since long time. Okay. Only industries may not be there, but profit, exploitation, okay, classes, all these things are there already. Right? For example, you must have read about Silk Route. Do you guys know Silk Route? Silk Route, huh? What was happening in Silk Route? The luxurious goods, only luxurious, the commercial goods were sold. This is also capitalism. And luxurious goods were sold for profit only. ऐसे थोड़ा ना कि इतना दूर दूर वो चल रहे हैं फ्री में देने के लिए, equal distribution. That was also capitalism. If profit is something that characterizes capitalism, that is capitalism. And Max Weber has termed it a unique name. You will get to know eventually how Max Weber characterized capitalisms have different types. Okay. And when we criticize capitalism, we are criticizing our own model that we have made. Okay. Anyhow. Now quickly write down the features. इसको खत्म करते हैं, बहुत हुआ इसका. Features of ideal type. First, ideal type is not actual type nor average type. It is only approximate type. Okay. Ideal type is not actual type nor average type. It is approximate type. Okay. Second, ideal type helps in guiding the research. Ideal type helps in guiding the research. Okay. Ideal type helps in guiding the research. Third, it helps in studying similarities and convergence between the model and reality and real. It helps in studying similarities and convergence between the model and the real. Okay. That means, what does it mean? Suppose I make ideal type of capitalism. Ideal type of capitalism. Okay. Suppose I'm a researcher, I really want to compare American capitalism with Indian capitalism. Okay. Or Chinese capitalism. Let me think like that. So I will first, what I'll do? First, I will make features of capitalism in my head. Okay. I'll go to America and see how many of those features that I have in my head about capitalism actually match with American capitalism. Okay, then I will get to know in America, state is also owner of few enterprises in the sense it is not completely free market. State does intervene. Okay, so then I would come to know that okay, this is only a model which is helping me to realize when actually state, at what time state intervenes and at what time state does not intervene. In the sense, this is not the actual type that I have in my head. Okay, but this type that I have in my head is actually helping me to understand the dynamic reality in a better fashion. Okay, so during coronavirus, what happened? Donald Trump invoked Defense Production Act. Okay, and in the Defense Production Act, the Ford company, that is manufacturer of car, the Ford company was now making COVID vaccines or that ventilators. The car company is now making ventilators. This is the power that Defense Production Act has under president. Okay, this power was you there. Therefore, Ford, which is a private sector company, is now making ventilator, that is public good, healthcare department for the state. That means state does intervene. तो वो मेरा मॉडल गलत हो गया. That means वो मॉडल मेरे हवा दिमाग में ही है सिर्फ. ओके, सो मैं कैपिटलिज्म कैसे बोल दूं उसको? Can I call America capitalism when I clearly I can see, I can read newspaper and I know कि state intervenes? How am I calling it capitalism? तो वो सिर्फ मेरा कॉन्सेप्ट है. It does not exist in reality. Okay, ये जो concepts होते हैं, these labels are given for convenience of people, so that people conveniently read things and understand. These are not real things. Okay. So the debate, when you see a debate between people over democracies, over capitalism, communism, socialism, that is very farcical idea. To have a debate on these things is very subjective, and you may not even learn anything out of that debate because these people are fighting over their own models which they have in their head. Okay, and none of those people have actually explicitly made those models explicit in the first place and assumed that the other person may know what the model is in my head and started debating on it. Anyhow, it helps in studying similarities and convergences, okay, or divergences, that means differences. Let me, instead of similarities, let me write this. Divergences, that means differences, and convergences, that means similarities. So the model will help me in studying divergences and convergence between model and the real. I'll get to know what is capitalism, so called. Okay. Ultimately, what is happening? Ultimately, the last line. Ultimately, ideal type is a measuring rod. Measuring rod. That model is a scale. You go to any place with this scale, you evaluate that place with this scale in your head, then you come to know the difference between the scale that you have and the reality, and then you start writing differences between what you thought and what the reality is, which you call as difference. Okay, you go with this model to some other country, then you write down some features, then you compare. This is what is happening. Okay, now to give you one more example, the last example. This will be last example. Okay, I'm using one word, okay, one word which is casually spoken by people and written on by people. Terrorism. War against terrorism. Suppose you read newspaper articles, war against terrorism. Again, a concept used. Now, Weber is cautioning us. Weber is telling us ये एक मॉडल है, मॉडल एग्जिस्ट करता नहीं है. पहली बात तो इसको समझ लो. ये मॉडल किसका बनाया हुआ है? Now, first you tell me, what do you think are the features of capitalism? Sorry, terrorism. Video is breaking. Stuck. Is video stuck? Fine, fine, fine. Yes. Let me check video. तो I think fine है. अब इधर से भी देख सकता हूँ मैं. फाइन है वीडियो तो. Okay. Yes. Some features of terrorism. Violence against the state and civilians. Unified sacred goal, political goals, violence way to achieve political goals, violence by non-state actors. ठीक है. Okay, creating fear among masses. So, first you said they use extreme violence against the state. Against the state. Okay. Second feature you said is target civilians. They target civilians. Okay. Any other feature? Creating fear among masses. Use of certain governments. ठीक है. So basically, they are not part of the state. They are not part of the state, right? They operate outside the mainstream politics. Okay. Basically, some people were writing war against terrorism. So I asked them, what is terrorism? First, you tell me. So they told me terrorism is this. In terrorism, extreme violence is used against the state. We will have to wage war against this. Okay, ठीक है. Second, in terrorism, civilians are targeted. अच्छा ठीक है. In terrorism, you operate outside the mainstream politics. तो ये आप इसके अगेंस्ट वॉर करने जा रहे हो, राइट? वॉर अगेंस्ट टेररिज्म, दैट मींस वॉर अगेंस्ट दीज थिंग्स. अच्छा, अब तुम ये देखो मेन चीज अभी. सपोज आई एम मेंशनिंग फ्यू नेम्स हियर. ओके. ओके. खालिस्तानी. Now tell me, are they terrorist? तीनों फीचर्स हैं उसमें. अभी फंसोगे, देखो तुम. आसान नहीं है ये बात. You will find these three features in Khalistani. They use extreme violence against the state. They target civilians also sometimes. Okay, sometimes. कभी अभी हो जाता होगा. Consciously, unconsciously, whatever that may be. They operate outside the mainstream politics. Of course, they are not running फ्री एंड फेयर इलेक्शन. कोई इलेक्शन के थ्रू तो नहीं आ रहे हैं. ओके, हाँ हाँ वो बात सही है इमरान पाशा, बिल्कुल उसके ऊपर मैं बाद में आऊंगा. Second, let me talk about one more group here. ISIS. ओके, ISIS में पूरा मैच करेगा ये. बट लेट मी ऑल्सो टॉक अबाउट वन मोर ग्रुप, रेड ब्रिगेड. ये इटली का है. ओके, इटली. ISIS, you know, Middle East. Khalistani, you know, India. Okay. Let me also talk about one more group, ETA. Okay, these are separatists basically in Spain. उनमें भी ये features हैं. Now, what is that one thing which I want to highlight is this Red Brigade in Italy. They are basically leftist organization. Leftist organization like Communist Party of India Maoist here, CPIM. Okay. CPIM, not Marxist, Maoist की बात कर रहा हूं. Okay. CPIM that has been called as terrorist under ये तुम्हारा जो act होता है, I forgot the name of the act. Okay. Just like Red Brigade in Italy that has been called as terrorist. Okay. Second, we have ETA in Spain. Okay. What is their demand? Their demand is to have separate state. These are those people, these are Basques, Basque community. They want to have a separate state. Khalistani wanting to have separate state. Okay. ISIS wanting to have separate state. Okay. NSCN, Nagaland Socialist Council. Okay, NSCN in the Northeast. That is also called as terrorist. Khaplan faction specifically. NSCN. Okay. Okay. So these are different models of terrorist that we have. Some are separatist, some are again separatist, some are violent, some are, you know, making demand for a separate state again. Now, all these people who are called as terrorists are not like one and the same. Okay. There is a huge difference between Khalistani and ISIS. Still, both of them are terrorists. There is huge difference between Khalistani and ETA, Basque separatists. Their methodology, their demand, the way they express their demand. Red Brigade and NSCNK, huge difference. Again, CPIM, and in fact, there is one party, Hindustan Socialist Republic Association, HSRA. किसकी पार्टी थी ये? This was party of Bhagat Singh. Okay, and this party was also called as terrorist. Now you know this Hindustan Socialist Republic Association, CPIM, NSCN, Khalistani, ISIS, Red Brigade, ETA, Spain, all these are very different people in different contexts, different time and space, having different demands, but all of them are terrorists. Now, if all of them are terrorists, first of all, we should have a clear idea of what terrorism is. And we made this thing. They use extreme violence against the state, that is what terrorism is. They target civilians, that is what terrorism is. They operate outside the mainstream politics, that is what terrorism is. Okay, but that is just a mental construct. That is not what reality is. In the sense, there are people who are in the politics, who are in the mainstream politics, who, despite being in the mainstream politics, may be targeting civilians and may be again using extreme violence, but we will not call them terrorists just because they are in the mainstream politics. So does that mean just because they are in the mainstream politics, so they are not terrorists? So if we think like this, that means we are using labels as convenience, not as a depiction of reality. Okay. See, I am out of mainstream politics. I am accused of terrorist. You have done the same thing, but you are not accused of terrorist. Why? Acts are same, but one is terrorist, second is not. Just because he is in the mainstream politics, or she or that or may, whatever that may be, basically what I'm trying to say is terrorism is an ideal type. It is a model. It is not happening in reality. It does not exist in real world. Okay. Anyhow, what did we learn basically? In conclusion, ideal type helps in differentiating between the mental constructs and empirical world, thereby bringing us closer to reality. Ideal type helps in differentiating between the mental constructs and empirical world, thereby bringing us closer to reality. Okay. Ideal types are of two types. For example, see, American capitalism, ideal type. American capitalism in 1850, American capitalism in 2021. Both are capitalism, but both are different. Okay, in 1850, what capitalism was in America, today also again we have capitalism in America, but that is very different capitalism. One thing is for sure, capitalism has evolved, has changed. Okay, but still it is capitalism. Okay, still we are calling it capitalism only. So first is, of course, historical ideal types. Historical ideal types. Historical ideal types. And within historical ideal types, we have historical, particular, and historical universal. Okay, historical particular and historical universal. Historical particular, that means that phenomena existed only in that time or in that space, never ever it happened afterwards. Historical or in particular, think like this. Okay, so here write one line: historical particular ideal types are those which emerged in particular historical conditions, which emerged in particular historical conditions. For example, for example, capitalism in West. Capitalism in West मतलब कि इन्वेस्ट वाला इन्वेस्ट नहीं, in the West, Western countries. Capitalism in the West is a historically unique phenomena. Capitalism in the West is a historically unique phenomena. Okay. Then ideal type, historical universal. It is the one, it is the one which is found universally, which is found universally in variety of historical context, which is found universally in variety of historical context. Okay. For example, feudalism. Okay. Feudalism. Feudalism existed everywhere. But Western capitalism, which developed in Europe, did not exist everywhere. It was unique phenomena to the Western society. Nowhere in the world you saw Western capitalism or capitalism developing like that in West. But feudalism we had everywhere. During medieval India, or even during the late ancient empires that we had in India, we had feudalism. It was land-based economy. Okay, but industrial setup was very unique phenomena to the West. Okay, so this was all about ideal type. Okay, ये हो गया तुम्हारा टॉपिक ओवर. Now remember, whatever we are now going to read will be ideal type. Okay, not the reality. Only an ideal type we are going to read of everything. This is what Max Weber is very clear about. क्या हुआ? सेकंड टाइप आइडियल नहीं, यही है बस. दो टाइप बताया ना, हिस्टोरिकल पर्टिकुलर, हिस्टोरिकल यूनिवर्सल. वो उसी में है, वो वन के आगे मैंने कर दिया था ऐसे दो एरो बना दिए. ओके. अच्छा, बाय द वे क्लास, आई विल हैव क्लास टुडे टिल 4:45. ओके, 4:45, आधा घंटा और, आधा घंटा और. ओके, जस्ट गिव मी 2 minutes break. The next topic that we are going to start now is social action. Social action. let me begin with what next topic, that is social action. Audible? Social action will quickly start with the definition. First thing that we do is definition. What is social action? Any action that is meaningful, purposive, and oriented to other actor in a historical context is social action. Okay. Now, suppose suddenly it started raining in Delhi. Just 2 minutes back, it started raining. Okay. I went out for a break and I saw it is raining. The moment I saw it is raining, I opened my umbrella. Okay. To protect myself from the rain. Is this social action? No. No, not at all. It is not social action. बिल्कुल सही बात कही. You're right. It is not a social action because it is just a reaction to umbrella. It is not. It is just a reaction to rainfall. It is not a social action. Social action has to be oriented to other actor, meaningful and purposive. It was just a reaction to rainfall. It was not social action. Okay. Suppose I was riding bike. Okay. I was riding bike going from Rajendra Nagar to my home. Okay. On the way, one other biker was coming towards me. By chance, my concentrate, I was not fully concentrated while driving. Okay. He was also not fully concentrated while driving. We were talking on phone to someone. Okay. And by chance, we collided with each other. Okay. Collision between two bikes. Is this social action? No, it is not social action. By chance, we collided with each other. It was not intentional, it was not purposive. Okay. I did not deliberately collided with that biker. It was by chance, accidental. Social action is action that is meaningful, purposive, oriented to other actor. Okay. The collision between two bikes is not social action because it was not purposive, meaningful. Okay. Other actor was there, but my collision, the bike that got collided was not specifically oriented to that person. It was not meaningfully done. Okay. But suppose I do it deliberately, क्योंकि मुझे इस आदमी को मजा चखाना है, because 2 minutes back he went past by me in a very rash speed and it actually frustrated me. इतना तेज से निकल के गया, इसको मैं मार के दिखाता हूं अभी. Okay, so this is social action. Now I am going to collide with him purposefully. Okay, बताने के लिए इसको कि स्पीड क्या होती है बाइक की. ठीक है. Is wife and husband suicide a social action? Is wife and husband suicide a social action? If I commit suicide, okay, because of someone, that is social action. Okay, if I commit suicide because of someone, that is social action only. It was purposeful, meaningful, oriented to someone. In a historical context, there must have been some history behind that phenomena. That is why it is social action. Okay. Now you know what is social action. Weber talks about types of social action. Okay, types of social action. First is affective social action. Second is traditional social action. Third is value rational. Social action. Okay. Which is also called as word rational. W-E-R-T, German word. Word rational. And fourth is goal rational. Social action. Which is also called as Zweck, German. Zweck rational. Four types of social action are there. Affective social action, traditional social action, value rational, that is word rational, W-E-R-T, and goal rational, that is Zweck rational, German, Z-W-E-C-K, Z-W-E-C-K, rational. Okay. Now, just remember that ideal type also, okay, because everywhere it is going to be used. And gradually you will come to know the meaning of ideal type. Abhi you have only surface understanding, okay. Now, first I'll define affective social action. Any social action driven by emotion or affection is affective social action. Any action driven by emotion or affection is affective social action. Okay. For example, suppose I am reading book of sociology, any book. So I am doing it because I love sociology. So it is my love for sociology that I am reading that book. Okay. So my reading, for example, if I'm reading, my reading of a book, sociology book, is driven by emotion or affection towards that scholar or towards that concept, whatever I am interested, okay, in that. So that is affective social action that I'm doing. Okay. Now, second, when when you celebrate your mother's birthday or your father's birthday, or when you celebrate this Mother's Day, Father's Day, and you post a picture on WhatsApp, Facebook, or Instagram, wish you Mother's Day, or you phone her, or you gift her something, that is, you are doing it out of affection that you have for your mother or your father or your brother or your sister, whatever that may be. That is affective social action when you gift anything to someone. Okay. Second is traditional social action. Traditional social action is the one which is driven by traditional values or habit. Traditional values, customs, or habit. Traditional values, customs, or habit. Okay. For example, when it is Diwali, you go to someone's place, gift him something. During Diwali, you gift your boss. Okay, this is what our tradition is. We give gifts on Diwali to our seniors, to people who are very close to us. Okay, traditional social action. When you get promotion in office, you go to temple. This is habit, this is our values, these are our traditions. Okay, and you be thankful to God for your success. This is traditional social action. Okay, now the fact is, maybe, and not maybe, the fact is, when you are doing traditional social action, you cannot say it is purely traditional. There are elements of affection in it also. Okay, but these are not measurable things, but it is there. Okay, in reality, what is happening is a mix. It is all, everything is mixed up. But for your convenience, you have categorized things. One is effective, second is traditional. Okay, now I'm coming to the third and fourth, and then you see what Weber does. Okay, third is what rational. What rational social action. Okay, what rational social action. Remember, that means value rational. Social action. Value and rational both club together. Okay. For example, first let me define it. Any action that is rational within those values. Any action that is rational within those values is value rational. Okay. For example, let me give you example of Jain people. Jains. Okay. For Jains, it is rational to do business. Okay. Because their values prohibit them from doing any kind of agricultural activity. So within that value, it is rational for them to pursue mercantile activity or business. Okay. Okay. Rational, it is rational within the values of the Jainism. Within the values of Jainism, it is rational. Okay. If you are Sikh, Muslim, or any person belonging from any religion, if you give charity to someone, okay, and you justify charity according to your religious text, so within the realm of religion, your act of charity is rational. Okay. So what is rational is justified by certain values that you are coming from. Therefore, rational is not a universal concept. Rationality varies. First of all, okay, ये आ गया, आपको पता चलेगा इसका exact meaning क्या है. अभी you just have to understand. Okay, value rational means any action that is rational within those values. Okay, because Weber has criticized rationality also. Rationality does not exist. It is also an ideal type. Okay, that is why. वो आगे जाके पता चलेगा आपको, अभी नहीं. Fourth is Zweig rational. Zweig rational, that means goal rational. Any action that is done to seek goal in an efficient manner. Okay, to seek goal in a most efficient manner is Zweig rational social action. Zweig rational social action. Okay, now four types of social action I have told you. Now you listen to all the examples. I'll give you one example and connect one example with the four social actions. Okay, suppose affective social action. Since I have done BA in sociology, MA in sociology, I love sociology, I will take sociology optional. This is affective social action. प्यार है sociology से तो sociology ले लिया. Okay, traditional social action. My brother is IAS officer, he took sociology. My father is IAS officer, he also took sociology. So I will also take sociology. Out of tradition, चला आ रहा है क्योंकि यही करते हैं हम लोग. ठीक है. Third, what was third? Value rational. Okay. Within my values, in the sense I feel a lot for poor people. I feel a lot. Gender inequality is something I do not like, really. I feel a lot for weaker sections of society, and that is why I'm taking sociology. Okay, my values has made it rational for me to opt sociology, because sociology is largely the study of exploitation of weaker sections, and I empathize a lot with weaker sections. Okay, with women, with SC, ST, OBCs, or with the weaker men as well. Okay, and I somehow feel for these people, weaker sections, and I really want to do something for weaker sections also. So right now I'll begin this whole pursuit of working for weaker section right from this subject itself. Fourth, goal rational. I'll choose sociology because sociology is the most scoring, and it will take me very less time to score 300 plus. Okay, it is also very easy. Now, all the four explanations as to why you picked sociology are different. Okay, and all those are social actions. One is out of love, second is out of values that you feel for those weaker section, the empathy that you have. Third is because your father took sociology, your brother took sociology. Fourth, because I think that will give me maximum marks, ज़्यादा आसान होएगा. अब all these four reasons, in reality you would not find reasons layered like this. In the sense, you will not be in a position to tell me, or nobody else would be in a position to say that fourth is the only reason. Okay, maybe largely it is, someone would say like this, largely it is the score 300 plus and the content, and how it is relatable to my life, also very much relatable to what happens in my life. Okay, I can relate those things. Okay, so you will, and you may also start feeling love for the subject gradually. Okay, so you will not be able to differentiate between the goal rational and the affection that you have started feeling. In reality it will be mixed social action. Okay, in reality it will be mixed social action. So what is Weber trying to tell us by this theory? Weber is simply trying to tell us that reality is highly complex. Reality is highly complex, and to make sense of this complex reality, we formulate ideal type. we formulate ideal type. Now these four types which I just showed you were not the actual type. The feature, remember, ideal type features. Ideal type is not the actual type, nor the average type, it is approximate type. In the sense, in reality, in actual world, neither it is the goal rational thing that motivated you, nor it is purely affection, nor it is tradition habit, nor some senior toppers videos. It was all mixed up. There is no one reason. Okay. It was all mixed up. Because before choosing optional, it was not only the score thing that you also saw some toppers, you also saw some videos of some teachers, you also saw the content, and everything got mixed up. Okay, now everything since got mixed up, so reality is highly complex. Now if you want to make sense as a researcher, the world is actually this much complex, only much more complex than this. Now in order to make sense of this complex world, researchers make concepts. Researchers make concepts for their convenience, and making concept for this for their convenience is known as ideal type. It is pure mental construct. Okay, so what does it mean? It simply means that when I showed you four types, those were not four actual types, those are four purely mental constructs. Got it now? Those were four purely mental constructs, not the real world constructs. Clear? Argument between family members. Okay, suppose suppose I keep a pet. Pet होते ना, pet puppies छोटे वाले. Okay, suppose I keep a pet. Okay, now if I'm playing with that pet every day, okay, let us assume that is a Labra or a golden retriever, whatever that may be. Let us assume golden retriever. It is a golden retriever. छोटा सा उसका बच्चा है. ठीक है, I'm playing with it every day. Okay, I'm feeding it something, playing with it. That is affection basically that I have for that pet. Let us assume. Okay, now maybe since my family has this habit of keeping pets. Okay, so I am also involved in that. Okay, my brother actually got this pet from somewhere, so I'm playing with it. Okay, and I did not like pets, but gradually when I saw them playing with it, I also felt affection towards it. Okay, so I started doing exactly like them. So it actually became a habit for me. Now every day I would go back home, I would look out for it. कहाँ चले गया वो? Okay, तो initially I did not like, तो ये tradition में आ गया, मेरे habit बन गई है मेरी रोज उसके साथ खेलना. Okay, third, my religion tells me animate or inanimate, everything has life. Okay, so you cannot despise someone, you cannot hate an animal. Animal also has rights, animal also has life. Okay, my religion tells me to be compassionate towards life of these animals. Okay, so that is why I am doing it. Okay, fourth, I believe that if I play with pet, मेरे को वो लड़की पटाना आसान हो जाएगा. क्योंकि if I play with that pet and ask someone to click picture with that pet, okay, फोटो खिंचवा ली, उसके बाद मैंने पेट को लात मारा, चल निकल यहाँ से अब. ठीक है, अब वो फोटो जो है मैंने यूज किया, अपने फेसबुक पे डाला. ठीक है, और फिर लड़की को लगेगा कि यार कितना अच्छा है ये आदमी, कितना दिल का अच्छा है, पेट्स के साथ खेलता है. So that was goal rational social action. Okay, so every day I would go out for you know, long stroll with that pet, okay, and I would voluntarily go in that area जहाँ पे अच्छी अच्छी लड़कियां होती हैं, ठीक है, तो वहां पे मैं जानबूझ के घूम रहा हूँ ऐसे से कर रहा हूँ, नो 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 नो, इधर नहीं, इधर नहीं, इधर नहीं जाना है, तो चलो मैं भी चलता हूँ जहाँ पे तुम जा रहे हो, ठीक है। तो ये जो है, ये गोल रैशनल सोशल एक्शन है, ओके, बिकॉज आई नो कि गर्ल्स विल लुक एट दैट पेट, okay, they will ask me, oh, this is so cute, this is so such a nice puppy, okay, and then I will ask her, अच्छा अच्छा, what's your name, what do you do, इस बहाने बातें हो जाएंगी। तो this was goal rational, कोई वैल्यूज कुछ नहीं, ऐसा कोई प्यार व्यार नहीं था, एक ही दिन की बात थी वो सिर्फ, ठीक है। In reality, reality is highly complex, and to make sense of this complex reality we formulate ideal types. In real world you cannot easily say that this was only goal rational. Multiple things were there. If I had no affection for that puppy, मेरे लिए तो मुश्किल हो जाता उसको घुमाना, affection तो थी मेरे पास उसके लिए, okay, okay, and I did this thing voluntarily. I went to that park because I know I have seen people doing this. So it has been a tradition in Bollywood. I have seen, and in many friends have done this thing also. Okay, so I have seen people doing like this. So I also copied them and did this. It became a habit for me to every day, go out with the dog and stroll in that around that park. Okay, so reality is highly complex. We make ideal type. Okay, now this was all about social act. So two concepts are over. Okay, now the real idea is whatever we have learned so far. Whatever we have learned so far was, first, basically what we learned so far, I'm telling you, objectivity does not exist. Objectivity does not exist in the real world. Okay, objectivity does not exist in the real world. Researcher uses concepts to make sense of the reality. The very idea of using concept, the very idea of using concept reflects values of researcher. Because when you use certain concepts, that means values are somehow affecting you, influencing you. And when you apply a concept to explain reality, your values are coming out. Reflects values of researcher. Okay. Now, since values of researcher are coming out, that shows objectivity does not exist. So what is that one thing that we can do to make the reality so-called objective in nature? Okay. At max, what we can do is to stay value neutral. How can we say value neutral? By formulating ideal types. This is what we have learned. When you make ideal types, you call it ideal type only. So you do not be deterministic. This is what capitalism is. No. When you say this is what capitalism is, it is highly reflective of your values. You have to say, this is what I think capitalism is. When you say like this, then you are objective. If you say this is what capitalism is, this is democracy, this is not democracy, you are not objective. Okay. So that is why when I asked you, is China democracy? You said no, no, you are not objective. You should have said, sir, I think this is what democracy is. And these features are not there in China. Therefore, China is not democracy. And then I would have told you, you think this is what democracy is. That means democracy is not objective reality. That is you. That is what you think is. Okay. On the other hand, what I think, this is what democracy, and these features are there in China, and therefore China is democracy. So what is democracy? You think that is democracy, I think this is democracy. So what is democracy? समझ गए? Now did you get it? Every concept reflects values of researcher. Maybe you are highly, what do I say? Maybe you are highly influenced by American media. Okay. Maybe you are against Marxism. You are a highly right-wing scholar. Okay. And that is why you think China is not democracy. But to some Chinese scholar, that is a democracy. In fact, Article 1 of Chinese constitution says, we are democratic dictator. We have democratic dictatorship. Democratic dictatorship. Okay. Socialist democracy. Chinese variant of, this is Chinese variant of democracy. Chinese version of democracy है ये. So democracy तो वो भी है. So this is not the democracy that you think democracy is, but that is also democracy to them. So what is democracy? Democracy is nothing but imaginations. उसके ऊपर fight क्यों करनी फिर? Okay. Objectivity does not exist in real world. Researcher uses only his construct to make sense of the reality. The very idea of using concept to make sense of reality reflects the values of researcher. Maybe that researcher is leftist, rightist, Hindu, is Muslim. And what at max researcher can do is to be value neutral by clearly saying that this is an ideal type only, not the objective. Khatam. ठीक है? Any doubt? Why Weber is directing to historians, why not sociologists? Yes, even to sociologists also. Everyone. Largely, why he is using the word historian? Because when Weber was writing, there were not enough sociologists. Sociology is very young discipline. अभी तो जाके 100 साल हुए हैं उसको. When Weber was writing, he is considered as founder of sociology. One of the founder of sociology. Being a founder of sociology, he had no one to critique except Marx and Durkheim. And he did not mention their names explicitly, Marx or Durkheim. So largely he had to critique historians only. Okay, because historians also tend to use such types. They talk about nationalism, democracy, revolutions. Okay. So, sir, in dog example, what is ideal type? All these social actions were ideal types. Traditional social action is an ideal type. In the sense, in reality, whatever you do is not only out of tradition. Goals are also there, rational calculation is there, affection is also there, values are there. Okay. Sir, link social action with ideal type with an example. Link social action with ideal type, वही तो किया मैंने. देखो, affective social action, traditional social action. Okay. What rational social action, Zweig rational social action. Okay, these are ideal types of social action. What is the meaning of this line? You know this very well. Ideal type means mental constructs. Mental constructs means utopia. It means something that does not exist in reality. something that does not exist in reality. That means in the real world, no action is purely Zweig rational, no action is purely word rational, no action is purely traditional social action, no action is purely affective social action. These are only mental constructs. In reality, you have mix of all these. The reality is a mix. Reality is a mix of all these actions. Suppose, one more example I'm giving you. Sir, is ideal type culture specific? Mental? Yes, yes, it is culture specific. Values जो आ रही हैं वो कहाँ से आ रही हैं? Culture से ही आ रही है, उसके history से आ रही है. I go to temple, I pray to God. Okay. Now, would you be able to tell me which of these actions my act fit in? No. In reality, I'm praying to God. In reality, I'm praying to God. Only because my mother forced me to go along with her. Okay. So I had no choice but to, give her company. And she told me कि यहाँ मंदिर के बाद हम चलेंगे शॉपिंग के लिए, ठीक है, पहले एक बार यहाँ चलना है. तो आई सेड चलो ठीक है यार. So she was doing something like this, so I followed her. So my visit in temple, if I'm standing there, if I'm praying like this, does not mean I'm religious. Okay, it was purely goal oriented because I knew my mother had told me, if you go to temple with me, then I'll buy you that computer or that bike. Okay, so it was highly goal oriented social action. It was not कोई प्यार व्यार नहीं था मेरा भगवान के लिए. It was not effective social action. Okay, maybe I had some emotions also for God. Okay, and while closing my eyes, I started thinking of all the success that I want to have in my life. Okay, and maybe I have seen my father, my brother, my mother doing this thing, going to temple every Friday or Monday. That is why I am giving her company. In reality, you will see all the elements. You cannot see only this is the reason behind this. This is the reason behind this. That is the reason behind this. Why Max Weber is talking like this is something you will get to know tomorrow. Why did he talk about social action theory? Okay, because remember this line, in reality, there is no cause effect. Just like we have in natural science. In natural science, we have cause effect relation. X led to Y. In social world, there is no. First of all, X, what is X? X is your construction. Okay, Y, what is Y? Y is your construction. Y does not exist. And then you say X led to Y. बड़ी अजीब बातें कर रहे हो ना. X पता है ना Y पता है. X led to Y. Okay, capitalism does not exist. That is your construction. Revolution does not exist. That is your construction. Okay, so I'll explain all these things tomorrow. Okay, time हो गया 5 बज गए. चलो, see you tomorrow then. Tomorrow is very important. Okay. ये तो भी टीचर है नहीं मेरे हाथ में.